Hello, JP.
Hello, hello.
A huge welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Back to the
Thanks.
show.
Yeah, I was gonna say thanks for having me here again.
Yeah. I don't know how many times you've been on the show. I think you could be our top repeat guest though.
Ooh, very fancy. Cool. I'm gonna have to
Mm.
compete with James Tripp because he tends to follow me every time because I talk about him so much.
Yeah, I think it could. I'm not totally sure, but I think it could be your fifth time.
Ooh, sweet. Well, I love it. I
Yeah.
love it. And
Yeah.
just I think more often than I would have thought I would think about the time that I got to be with you at your house. Just like it's just
Mm.
so. I mean, it's informed my vision. It's actually I didn't even think about this right now. My visit to you and your house is part of why I live where I live now,
Oh
because just
my
it's so
goodness.
magical and so beautiful the way your family is, the house, the setting. It's imprinted so much on me, and then it informed like what I would love for my life, and years later here we are. So, yeah.
Oh, that's delightful. I don't know when it was, but I'm sure I saw the Facebook memory of the photo of us
Hmm.
in
Hmm.
standing by my fireplace come up the other
Yeah.
day.
Oh, inside your
Yeah.
house, yeah. Do you remember how many pictures I was taking loads of pictures of your gardens and stuff because I was so enamored with it. But I kept those and it fed me, and so yeah,
Oh.
thank you for that. Yeah,
Oh, well, you need to come again. And the garden is actually looking even more beautiful
cool,
since. So yeah, you're very welcome back to have another look and take more photos.
sweet. We got more kids this time.
Oh yeah. Yeah,
I had Asher,
yeah, that's
and
so
now I've got
true.
Rumi as well. Yeah,
Mm. Yeah, we were saying it feels as though it hasn't been that long since we've caught up. It's actually been quite some time,
it's been some
which
years.
leads me really nicely to our topic. And I was, as I said to you before we started recording, I was remembering when the three of us, including James Tripp, we were in a kind of exploration together around tarot, but
Hmm.
very much from a kind of like intentional magical lens.
Hmm.
Um, and I was thinking, oh, when we were doing that last year, and then we were trying to work it
Mm.
out, we're not even sure how many, like it was maybe 2019,
Maybe
maybe
2 years. Yeah.
2020. Um, and the reason that I really wanted to have you come back on the show and specifically talking about magic was we went into that kind of like real exploration together, which for me then sparked a much more intentional choosing of magic and then in the form of shamanism personally. And I'm like, you'd said something, and I can't remember, said something on Facebook, and I'm like, where is JP on
Mm.
magic? Because we've kept in contact, but we've not really spoken about that topic since.
Mm.
And I was just like, I'm really, and I've intentionally not asked you anything about this yet because I
Mm.
really want to
Mm.
hear
Mm.
fresh where you've got to on it. And I think before we go into the kinds of the sort of your personal experience lens on it, I would love to know, like when you're talking about magic, what does that mean for you? What do
Mm.
you mean when you use that word?
Mm. I mean, the two things come to mind. I mean, the first thing that comes to mind is I mean surrender. It's a surrender to, or it's a surrender of the way of doing life that is so common that we can't even see it, which is to think your way through things, to make sense
Mm,
of something before you take action, to have some sense of certainty based on reason in order to feel safe and right and just in doing and behaving and choosing the things that you do behave and choose. It means a surrender of that into something else. I guess you surrender those things into what I would call magic, which is a trust in a possibility that doesn't have words necessarily. It doesn't have kind of like, it doesn't have rationality to it. It's a trust of a certain felt sense, a certain inner orientation, and it's a trust in a a different story about how how this universe even works, right? Like that whole thing. It's like
mm,
the scientific method. People are often saying, and my background is science, so I get it. Um, that's correlation, not causation. you're confusing the two.
Mm.
And for me, magic is the surrender to a world of correlation as causation, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so it's like everything is entangled. It's allowing yourself to live a myth, to live a story, and to have it do its work on you and your life. And it's like going for a ride instead of driving magic. And the other thing that comes to me when I think of magic is I think of language. And I really think of about the capacity that thought has to create our world. You know, the for me, thought is an echo of speaking. It's like we say what we think, but our thinking is really a pattern that emerged through external dialogue between human beings.
Mm.
And then it happens inside your head. And so conversations with people, conversations with the self, it's just conversation. And that conversation creates our material world. And so I'm really enamored with the magic of how we think and how that creates our world, not just experience, but our actual world.
Oh
So
my
that's,
goodness.
yeah.
That's got to be, I often ask guests questions of the kind. I may not ask it exactly the
Mm,
same way, but I've heard so many different definitions of magic, and yours was absolutely delightful. I could actually,
mm.
I was feeling my kind of heart bloom as you were talking. And yeah, there's so much in what you said that is shared for me too. And one of the things I particularly love in what you've just said right at the beginning, and it brought to mind, oh, actually, I think a mutual friend and a past podcast guest, William Whitecloud.
Mm.
Um,
Yeah, he's a good friend. That's awesome. I didn't know he was on your podcast. Great.
yeah, a couple of times. And as you know, his whole thing is magic, and
Hmm.
his teaching on that just clear repetition of what you could say is kind of like it's not about the how.
Hmm.
I think is genius, and I think
Mm.
is a kind of like a snapshot of some of what you were just saying, as in,
Yeah.
yeah, not needing to kind of,
Surrendering the how.
yeah.
That's what I'm trying to say. Yeah, he says a lot of things much more succinctly. But
No, but what you
that
said
is
was
it.
glorious as well.
Okay,
But
cool. But the how is the at least the Western ideal, right? If you know how, then you're right, good, just, okay, approved.
yeah,
Then take
it's staying
action.
in the
Yeah.
lane of certainty for the
Yeah.
known,
Yeah.
which
Yeah. Yeah.
works. And as you say, we do that because it feels safe, because it is the
Yeah.
known, and it just misses out everything that
The
lives
magic of
inside of that
life.
track. Yeah.
Yeah. That's why I always say with that kind of stuff, the problem is that it works.
Yeah.
The problem is that it works because you're
Yes.
sold on it because the end is the only thing that matters. And so I say, my means justify my ends. My means are primary. My means is
Mm,
magic. It will
mm.
justify the ends, so
Oh, I
lovely.
love that. So taking this into more, I guess, tangible material
Mm,
terms, I notice when I'm having conversations this kind, I really get off on the kind of, I guess, like energetic laws and the sort of
mm-hmm,
metaphysical concepts. And then I'm also kind of got that voice in my ear of the listener saying, like, but ask him, like, what does that actually
mm,
mean? Or like, what does that look
mm-hmm,
like in real life?
mm-hmm,
So I'm
mm-hmm,
kind of like recognizing, like, we could have a whole conversation there. And,
mm,
you're known as someone who does create
mm-hmm,
real things in this world. So much of what you're about is about creating.
mm,
And I love what you've just said about the means, and
mm-hmm.
you do create a lot of ends as well.
Yes, yes. That's what I say. My means justify my ends. I didn't say the
Mm,
means are the only thing that matter. I said they matter more. And that's an
yes.
important distinction.
Mm,
When I say my being is primary, my means are primary, that is in reference to those things which are secondary, which is still pretty important. They're pretty up there. Like
yeah.
making stuff happen, money, the life I want to live, the relationship I want, all stuff super important to me. I just put the means and the being, the magic right in front as the path. Um, the thing that you were just pointing out, and you're tracking your listener, which is beautiful and magical and sensitive. And when I'm in a conversation with somebody who's got that feeling, well, but what is this about? Like, make this tangible. The place that I usually go is right there. And because that is the thing in the way, right? Like
Mm.
that sense of urgency for the need is and a call from the podcast interviewee or the person you're in conversation with to ground it for me is a projection of that anxiety.
The
And
focus
to
on
be
the
able
ends
to,
again.
yes,
Yeah.
the focus on the end, the focus on the how.
Mm.
Yeah, but tell me how it works. And so I don't miss a beat. I don't miss a chance to be with a person when the thing that's in the way is alive. And so I would
Mm.
even say that to anybody who's listening and continues to listen. We're going to weave in and out of the material, tangible, into the conceptual. And in any moments where you feel lost and you're feeling like you need it to make sense, feel that edge, feel
Yeah.
that need, and even feel the complaint or the projection or the moment that you might want to switch off and go find something that's more grounded. Feel that. All right, feel that as the thing that's actually blocking you from waking the wild within you.
Yeah. Yes. Oh, I love that. And the sort of unashamedness that you just like, that's what's happening right there.
We need to
Mm.
be honest,
Yes.
because I mean, we all have. I mean, I've got my edge with it. Or there's stuff. There are podcasts out there where I'd be like, I gotta get somewhere else, But it's because it's too out there, and I need something more tangible. But then, like, that's my edge.
Mm.
And so if I'm not honest with myself about where my edge is, then I can't, move beyond it. And so my capacity to be with a person in theirs is an extension of my willingness to be. I have a quote. I'll just read it. I've been reading it in every interview recently. It's by Nietzsche. He says, "The strength of a person's spirit would then be measured by how much truth he could tolerate, or more precisely, to what extent he needs to have it diluted, disguised, sweetened, muted, falsified."
Oh, I love that. In fact, so much. I want you to read it to me again, please.
Okay, here we go. The strength of a person's spirit would then be measured by how much truth he could tolerate, or more precisely, to what extent he needs to have it diluted, disguised, sweetened, muted, falsified.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. It's written on my wall for that reason, right?
Yeah.
It's so confronting, because it's just when we read it, we know we're like, yep, yep. And there's so
Yeah.
much that I could be more that I could be tolerating, that I could be looking
Mm.
at, instead of
Yeah.
putting out there.
It actually reminds me, it's almost it's almost like the other side of the coin to an Alistair Crowley quote that I think I mentioned on the podcast a couple of weeks ago. And it's talking about freeing the will, meaning true will, from a magical sense,
Hmm.
freeing the
Hmm.
true will of its fetters. And it requires us to kind of root out all of our kind of taboos and complexes and repulsions.
Mm,
And it feels as though like they're as one, those two quotes, just
I think
looking at it
so.
from a different lens.
Yeah, you
Mm,
need to be honest with yourself about what the things are that you're believing that you've just adopted that are
yeah,
repressing your will.
yeah.
You know, what I need to tolerate the truth of my attachment to reason.
Mm. That was a big one for
As
me. That
yeah, well,
was
it continues to be
yeah,
for me,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
certainly was in the beginning as well.
Mm.
You know,
Yeah. Because again,
Ian
fear will have
McGilchrist's
you like, oh, no, now this is unsafe. Back on the
hmm
path of reason.
yeah,
This is the
the
time.
how,
Yeah,
yeah, all of it. Yeah, I was just saying, Ian
completely.
McGilchrist's work, The Master and His Emissary, really helped me to use reason to undo the dependence on and attachment to it,
Oh, yes.
which he talks about in his books about the right and left hemisphere and neurology and
Mm.
psychology, and he talks about like it's not like a hypocrisy to use reason to undo the attachment to reason. It's actually the path. It's the path of return. Um,
Mm.
you use it to untie yourself from it.
Yeah. It's like the flip side of what we resist persists. It's just like,
Hmm.
go right there.
Hmm. Yeah, 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 yeah,
Yeah, I
yeah.
love that. I really do. And yeah, it's been much less present over the last couple of years, but
Mm.
that was the biggie for me in the way of me like fully choosing in to magic, was that
Hmm.
kind of like, it's not really real, it doesn't make sense, it's not logical, is this scientific, blah blah blah.
Hmm.
But yeah, that really has been a big one for me.
I mean, the
So
fact of the matter is it's still I could still use say I'm using reason in the sense that I make more stuff happen in my life through magic than anything else.
Yeah.
So, like, logically, it makes sense to not be so logical about things and be more magical because it just works better. It's more fulfilling, it's more fun, it's more effective, it's more powerful. And then I can, that's the bridge back.
Yeah. Yeah. And so much more fun.
Yeah, that's what I meant. I
Yeah.
said that one too, but yeah, it is so much more fun. It makes the process enjoyable.
Yes, it really does. So would you just describe what that looks like in your life when you are
Mm.
working with magical means?
Hmm.
Would you share like how that would show up for you? I mean, feel free to either give like actual examples or more broadly,
Yeah.
like what would that look like for you?
Well, I'll share a recent one that's coming to mind. Is we moved. Well, there's so many pieces. I just have to dive in the middle, right? Because it's continuous, and my whole life is just from one thing to the next, and all the stories overlap. But and so we were immersed in a vision that we'd created, which my wife and I have created probably 3 or 4 visions for our life, and brought them to life, and then started over, and we're kind of living in the fourth and creating the fifth right now. But when we could say when we were creating the fourth, living in that, immersed in it, it was moving to Hawaii from Santa Monica, LA, where we lived, and we moved to Hawaii and we were in the house that we basically were envisioning and dreaming. It just dreamed it into creation, and everything was spot on about it, except the fact that we were renting and not owning, because part of the vision was to own. And so I realized that that wasn't actually distinguished in our vision. We kind of knew it, but we weren't
Mm,
really focused on it. So we started bringing in those kind of elements magically, imagery of deeds and titles and keys and these kinds of things, like to bring to life that aspect of the vision. And
Oh,
we
I'm
were,
getting
and
the
then we,
chills now.
yeah, and then we were going out into the world doing what people logically do that want to buy a house, which is you get an estate agent or a realtor, as we say here in the U.S., and you go and look at the houses that people have said they want to sell and that are for sale, because these houses are for sale and these houses aren't for sale. So that's what you do. That's how you do it. That's logical. It makes sense. That's what everybody does. And we're making offer after offer, sometimes $100,000 over asking price, and getting no, and not getting the house because the market's just wild. So many people were moving to Hawaii after the pandemic, um, and and so it just didn't feel magical at that point anymore.
Mm.
The purchase process, when it just wasn't working, it felt like work. Um, and so and then of course the first thing, the thing that almost always precedes the most magical experience is stress and frustration.
Oh yes, yeah, the test.
Yeah. And it was like I started getting really anxious because we had a 6 month lease or an 8 month lease that was coming towards its end. We weren't able to find a house to buy, and it was like, and then it was not easy to find a house to lease anyway. So what are we going to do? Our son's in school now in Hawaii, and how are we going to, it's just stress and worry. Then I started like, oh my God, I'm not going to be able to, I am not going to be able to magically materialize the house to buy. And so you can even hear the confusion right there,
Mm,
like as if it's me.
yeah. And you
But
couldn't renew on
yeah.
your current lease at the time, like that was
No,
the end.
there was
Yeah.
a people that were coming back to their island. It was their
Ah,
vacation home, so
yeah.
they were out and then coming back. So, yeah, it was a temporary stay. All of our stuff we had shipped to the island and was in a storage container here, so we were kind of living with their furniture, and it was temporary. But through being realized, it's like the stress wakes me up to the fact that I've lost my faith in magic,
Yes.
because you can't,
Yeah.
like, the two don't jive. You're not stressed out when your faith is alive and magic is alive.
Yeah.
Um,
Can you pause right there?
hmm. Hmm.
Because I think this is something that's such an important part of living magically. And I know that I have people when they start to um, be in this way, they think there has to be this kind of like fixed, like I'm only now going to operate magically. I'm just going to always be focused on my vision and not recognize like that. I describe it kind of like if our focus is, when we're working magically, our focus on our vision, part of that is that muscle that just kind of goes over to fear and then we bring it back
Hmm.
to the vision, over to
Hmm.
fear.
Hmm.
And as far as I've seen so far, I think most people who are creating magically have that happen, fear back
Yeah.
to like,
all the time.
yeah, it doesn't, that doesn't
It's a,
stop. It's just you build the muscle to bring it back.
yeah, you, and I
Mm,
think that's a very important point. It's kind of like the point I was making about like when you're like, oh, make this tangible. It's like, it's not trying to be in the fixed magic or the fixed reason. It's like actually welcoming the swing or the dance as the
mm.
thing.
Yes.
So
Yeah,
my,
yeah.
so for me, a
Mm.
magical life is a welcoming of the swing in and out of magic.
Yes, I love that. Yeah. Yeah, includes it.
Um,
It's part of living magically is the swing to not be
yeah,
magical. Yeah.
yeah,
Mm.
and 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 I even forget this
Yes.
long enough to help me get stressed out. And then either I somehow remember, or more often than not, I'm reminded by my wife Kalpna that I'm not trusting, and not just once reminded, but like maybe 10 to 12 times before I can actually hear her. And then it's like, okay, yeah, all right, it's time to
Yeah.
surrender again.
I love the way you skipped all that though, like especially the bit where she reminds you.
Yeah, she
Just
does.
realised I'm stressed and I need to. But I do think again, this is so important because I think because that just becomes so much just part of how we live, it's easy to miss the fact that like when we're in that space where we forget how these
Mm-hmm.
things can work for us, it's like we forget that it's really intense when we're in it. But I think again that
Mm-hmm.
can be. I love the way you actually said it. Something like I realized that my stress was sort of showing me that I'd kind of lost sight, I'd like forgotten to
Yeah.
trust. You said it like that. And I think more and more we start to recognize like that embodied experience is such a
Mm-hmm.
good indicator of where we actually are.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It's like pain, you know,
Mm,
it evolved so that you wouldn't use that limb until it healed. Like
yeah.
it serves a function. And if you can see stress as a reminder that you've fallen off the path of faith, then it's just like, don't like stress is like the pain of don't go that way, you know?
Oh, quote right there.
Yeah.
So once you
So
manage to get yourself back.
yeah, once we, you know, and it just takes a decision, which is a decision to surrender reason, figuring it out, needing to know how, doing it the normal way, and then opening and just trusting that it will occur when I let go, when I'm relaxed. And what that actually also means is surrendering the outcome. Like another kind of weird paradox of magic is that like I can be absolutely committed to something while at the same time not needing it to happen,
Yes.
like being
Yeah.
totally at peace if it doesn't occur, and being like ravenously focused on it
Oh my
at the
goodness. I'm
same time.
so glad you said this. Yeah. That is, I love the way you managed to encapsulate that. Like William Whitecloud couldn't do much better than
Yeah.
that. It really is that kind of, I think we can easily go one way and go so far into the idea of non-attachment that it just becomes like, I don't even really care, but it is that like gorgeous, juicy in the space of like, yeah, full appetite, full
Mm.
desire. And it's kind of like, it's
Mm-hmm.
not a kind of like, my life depends on getting it.
Mm-hmm.
Is
Mm-hmm.
that both?
I
Um,
used to see it in a very similar way, which is like it's this middle point between like I don't care and like I need it, but I actually don't see it that way
no,
anymore.
I don't see it.
I
It's a middle
see
point. It's
okay, I
beyond.
just
Yeah.
yeah, it's like my focus on creating something is one dimension, and
Mm,
another dimension is to either need it or not need it, or it's like,
mm.
and so I can be totally free of attachments whilst simultaneously completely, like I said, ravenously focused on that
Oh,
outcome
yes. Gotcha.
at the
Yeah. So
same
you're,
time. It's not like I have to
mm,
flip back or it's a pendulum swing. Like I
yeah.
can be
Mm,
moving towards the horizon and like nothing's going to get in my way. And if I don't make it before I die, I will die with peace in my heart
mm.
at
It's
every
interesting how you,
moment.
yeah, yeah. It's so interesting. So I think we hold it similarly and are describing it differently.
Yeah,
Um,
probably.
so the way I often describe things is there's a kind of like shadow, like a animated by fear, and then there's two ends of that, like two ends of that pole. And so here we could say one end of the pole is to be like so desirous of it, so needing it that we're like gripping, gripping, gripping. The other end is be like so just like, oh, whatever, it doesn't really matter if it happens.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
we can think like, oh, if we can just get to that sweet spot in the middle, we're okay. And then, oh, I'm too far over
Mm,
here. And
mm,
I
mm.
always say it's like the when we're creating from love, it's
Mm-hmm.
beyond that, it's off that pole
Absolutely.
altogether.
Totally. That's
Mm.
exactly. We're saying the same thing in
Yeah.
similar ways, I would say. Yeah.
Yeah.
So to tie it down for the people like that want to understand it tangibly, I'm here, I hear you, I feel you. What that looked like was letting go of buying a house in Hawaii, letting like not needing to buy a house
Mm.
and not needing to even have a place sorted out and not needing to like not even needing to stay in Hawaii if we couldn't find another rental. Like I will be happy either way. I will be at peace either way. And now that I've connected with that, now that I've let go, what am I going to do with my time? I'm going to focus on living in the reality of my owning a house in Hawaii.
Oh,
Just
yes.
all the
Mm.
things that I do to bring that to life and
Yeah.
trusting that things will be given. And I swear to you, within a couple of days, I'm just walking in from the driveway into the house, and with the kids, they go in, and I hear bang, 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 bang. I was like, what the hell is that? And I go outside, and we live at 4,000 feet on volcano Haleakala at this point, and there's like maybe two or three houses above us, and then it's just ranch to the top at 10,000. And there's a golf ball bouncing in my driveway. There's no golf course around. There's just a golf ball bounce, and I'm like, what the fuck? If this could have hit one of the kids, it could have killed them. Like I started to get like fear, worry, concerned, angry. And so I'm walking around the neighborhood, like just shouting, "Who's hitting golf balls?" Like through the few houses in front of us, and thinking like, what am I gonna do if I find this person? I'm not gonna like fight them or something, but like I was just mad. And as I'm walking around and not seeing anybody, not hearing anybody, I start to relax and calm down, and I start to think to myself, this is so random. There's something here. I don't know what it is, but this is going to lead to something magical in our life. I wasn't even seeing the house at that point. Just
Yeah.
a golf ball just fell out of the sky, like
How
into
can
our
it not
yard.
lead to something
You're right.
magical? That's logic for you, JP.
Yeah. So I just chose that was going to be. And we walk around, and I started talking to the neighbors, which I hadn't really done because we were there for a short time. The houses are like 5-acre lots. They're not close together, but I started going up people's driveways and just, hey, did you see anybody hitting golf balls? Blah, blah, blah. Anyway, long story short, I met a bunch of the neighbors. One of them in particular, she learned our story about not being able to find a place to buy. And she said, well, why don't you just post a little message on this app that people use for the community, because people in the community try to help each other out. And I was like, oh, that's a good idea. And I didn't do it, but I came home and I put the golf ball on my desk. And every day I came and I saw the golf ball and just had that thought, oh, maybe I should put that post up, as we continue to look at houses doing it the right logical way and it not working out. And eventually I was like, oh, that's why the golf ball is still there. It's reminding me to do it. So I just shared our story. I shared the truth on this little app that we live here. Our son goes to school. We're looking for a place to buy. And within 24 hours, I had 3 messages from people who didn't have their house in the market yet that were thinking of selling. And one of them in particular, we went to see, because it was kind of like, it wasn't, here's an important point. It wasn't exactly our vision, but the woman really, she was like, I really think you should come and see it. She was like, almost like, I know it's not exactly what you're looking for, but I think you should come. But I was like, and that was like, okay, I surrendered. It was kind of like a golf ball. It's not what I want, but all right, I'm saying yes. This, for me, surrender, I've learned, is not just surrendering to the small voice inside me, but surrendering to circumstances as God as well. Right. And so I said
Yeah.
yes. And we went. My wife walked in the front door and she's like, yes, this is our home. She just knew. And, again, a long story short, there's so many magical pieces. I had the golf ball in my pocket, my pocket at that point. When we came to see the house, I just brought it with me. I had a sense to bring it with me. And she's showing us around the house. And there's actually 3 houses. There's a separate standalone pool house that I now use as my office. There's a pool, citrus orchard. I mean, it's just a magical land. And she's got chicken coops and 30 chickens, or she had, now that we own. We walk into the coops, and in order to trick the chickens to lay the eggs in the coops and not all over the land, she puts golf balls in the chicken coops. So they sit
Oh
on the golf
my
ball and lay the egg. And
goodness.
I'm like, are you kidding me? This is crazy.
I've got
And
just
we
like
called
full
our
on
realtor to come
goosebumps.
down and look at the house. We called our realtor to help us to bring it to close. And he's driving to the house to see it for the first time, thinking, as he knows the story about the golf ball. And this is like on the next viewing. And he's saying to his wife, oh, I wonder what we should get John and Kalpna for a gift for the closing. And he looks down at the floor while he's thinking. And this brand new Tesla that he owns, he's driving in. He's in the passenger seat. And he doesn't golf. And a golf ball at that moment rolls out from underneath his seat. And then we go and look at and he gets out of the car. He's like, I don't know who this is or where it came from, but here you go. And then we're walking around the property with him, and we get to one of the houses on the property is rented out. The tenants just signed another lease, for, you're going to think this is made up, but this is
No,
absolutely true.
no. I trust you, thankfully.
There's a box on the front lanai. The tenant just purchased their first set of golf clubs. They're just sitting there as we go into the
Oh
house.
my
And so that's
goodness.
like, that's crazy. But here's the piece that you're not going to believe. The tenant, it's tenants, they're a couple. They just signed a lease for a year. So when we buy the property, they're coming with it. The man's name is John, and his partner's name is Morgan.
What on earth?
Yeah. And so 2 months later, we bought the house, and then 2 months after that, we moved in, and now John and Morgan are our tenants. We feed the chickens twice a day. We have golf balls in the coops, and this is our world.
That whole story is just like, here's one that I prepared earlier. I'm
Mm.
so
I
glad.
mean, it's a great one, but that's one of many. I mean, I'm living in, that it just constantly unfolds that way, but choosing
Mm,
magic, faith in magic, immersing yourself in a vision, not needing it, and being sensitive to circumstances and things in the environment, and imbuing stuff with meaning, allowing, like, choosing that golf ball's a sign. Maybe
yes.
I'm just talking shit, but that shit talking creates a myth that adapts and that wakes my wild and creates a sensitivity in me to the world that turns so many things into opportunities that wouldn't otherwise be there. I'm going to give you one that's alive today. In my new vision, we have groundskeepers on our property that help us to care for the land. And in my mind, logically, I thought in a couple of years, once we've got more disposable income, because we extended ourselves buying this house, and I'll have the money to hire them because they're like $50 an hour here in Maui, and it's not cheap. And then somebody on Instagram a couple of weeks ago or a month ago was like, "Oh, my friend's going to Maui. She'd love to stay in your guest house. Sometimes she does volunteer work." And I'm just like, "Huh." And I took the vision and I saw that. It's like, "Oh, that's because I'm supposed to have a groundskeeper now, not in 2 years when we've got the money to pay for somebody."
Oh,
She arrived 3 days ago. She's cleaning our garden. She's like, "This is the best. I love it. I'm part of this website, Workaway. You should put your house on it. You'd get loads of people." And then I also had a vision that I would have clients fly from around the world to be with me here. And I've always loved the Karate Kid and Mr. Miyagi and giving them work to do. And I just saw that, oh, wait, I don't have to wait till I've got
mm.
loads of people to pay loads of money to come and be here with me. I can actually offer work trade for my creating. And I've got a client already committed now for 3 weeks to come here to work on the farm, to have a session with me once a week in exchange for that work. And now
Oh,
I've shared
that's
that
so
story, and now I've got 3 or 4 people reaching out. And so it's like all aspects of the vision,
mm.
when they're held in combination with non-attachment, in combination with a sensitivity to what's occurring today, creates an exponential unfolding of that into the material world, like way
Yeah.
faster than you could ever reason.
Yes, yes, yes. Oh my goodness, I love that so much. I'm going to give you a really quick example that I had very similar to that grounds person you talked about that happened a couple of weeks ago, and it just shows again the speed of these things. But again, logically, you could not make happen
Mm-hmm.
that fast. Um,
Right.
I this was about 2 or 3 Saturdays ago. I was making breakfast, and I said to Chris, do you know what I would really love is an assistant that can take care of like stuff for me personally,
Mm-hmm.
just like, and therefore probably like based in the UK. And so it's going to be easy with kind of them phoning and arranging bits and pieces for me. And and then I didn't say this part, but I thought, I know the perfect kind of person would be this particular woman that someone else, Sarah in our team, mentioned to us last year that was available. We ended up going with someone else and didn't have her. And I was like, yeah, someone like her would be just like perfect. An hour later, Sarah, who I don't believe has kind of speakers all over my house,
Mm-hmm.
messaged me and said, so and so is now free again if
Mm-hmm.
you're interested in taking her on. And I was like, an hour ago, I was thinking this.
Yeah.
And fast forward, however many, it's like 2 or 3 weeks, she's now joined our team. And like
Mm-hmm.
magically in the interim, there's actually a role for her doing things that at the time weren't even like a thing in the team. So she's come on board and we'll be doing both. And that has
Mm-hmm.
happened through me just speaking it out and then
Mm-hmm.
like as unfolded that fast.
Yeah, that's what I mean about when I was saying earlier, like, oh, that's just you're confusing correlation with causation. I'm using stupid voice on purpose because, like, actually, like,
The science voice.
so, yeah, the science voice, the surrendering, the surrendering that and just trusting that like we are entangled, and the way that I feel and the way that I think actually affects the way that other people feel and think in a way that we haven't figured out how yet, and that doesn't matter.
Yes.
It works. It happens. And the more I trust in that, the more it happens, and that's enough for me to orient my life around it.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that so much. Oh my goodness. This is just this is such a gorgeous conversation. I haven't even looked at the time. I suspect we're kind of running we've got another 10
Well,
minutes
I
or
have
so.
more time, so like it's up to you. When you want to finish, we'll finish.
Yeah, let's so you're good for another 10 minutes or so, 10,
Yeah,
15
yeah.
minutes. Wonderful. So how, looking at the work that you do, so for us, Jonathan and I, more and more now, we are very intentionally inviting our clients and students into this worldview, let's say, into creating
Yeah.
their lives from this place.
Hmm.
How much is that now how you work with your people? How much of that is something you are, one way or another, um, is part of the work that you're doing with people?
I mean, it's not part, it's all of it. That's
Yeah,
the only
that's what I
thing we
imagine.
offer.
Yeah.
That's
Mm.
the only thing we offer. But the thing is, we don't offer it as because this is the absolute truth. We offer it because this way of being and seeing this, we call it this perspective, will give you more freedom, more love, and more power to create what you want in your life.
Mm.
So I don't know what the absolute truth is. I live as if this is true because of what it does. And I've said that a few different ways throughout this call today. But so that's the everything and the anything. And sorry, the everything that we do is that.
Mm.
That's our offer, is like you can literally create everything you want. And I love how antithetical that is to so much of the advice about, building a niche. Who do you help? What do you help them do specifically? Like narrow it down. Well, I help human beings create everything. All right, that's my fucking niche. That's my avatar.
I don't think I've heard you say that before. That I love that so much.
Yeah. On our new website, we have the word everything like in like size 1000 font, like at the bottom of every page, everything.
That's so gorgeous. That really is. So what's just crossed my mind is so the way you've answered that, like I would have been really surprised if you'd answered it any differently, but I'm still glad I asked you just to hear that. um how about with your children? I know that for me personally, it's become more and more just, it doesn't make sense to talk to my children about life any other way. And then also
Mm,
really noticing the contrast with the influence they're getting from the outside world, which again is like,
mm-hmm,
no, plan, how, all of those
mm-hmm,
things.
mm-hmm.
And that perspective I'm inviting them into. And it's been really interesting, like very specific things around, I don't know how a talk they're giving or a role they've got in the play or whether they'll get the role, how a particular friendship's going. And it's been really interesting watching them work with this and bring it
Yeah.
to life in their own way and how actually natural it is. That's the thing that's really, like, it can be for us adults, we've had like all that weight showing us like this is the track, stay in logic.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
That can be, as we've spoken about, it create a lot of resistance for us to every time we think of coming off that track. Whereas I've noticed with my children, it's, like, even though they're in the world which is still telling them no, stay on the track of
Mm,
logic, it seems
mm.
very natural for them to create in a magical way. So I'd love to know,
Yeah.
given you've got children too, I know
Well, I think it is.
one was a bit
I
younger,
always
but
say if there's anything that I've been like graced with in my life and didn't have to work for, that I think a lot of people do have to work for, is I somehow made it through the industrial education complex without without listening to the advice or the instruction to stop daydreaming,
yeah.
and without believing that I can't do something just because it's not like normal, like
Mm.
somehow I kept daydreaming. Like I can remember when I was a little kid waking up in the morning, thinking about the tree fort I wanted to build outside. And as soon as I finished my cereal, I'd run outside and just start doing it. And so my activity during the
Mm.
day was to bring into form that which was the following of the thing that I could see in my mind's eye, that in my dream,
Yeah.
my daydream. So it's like imagination, action, result, imagination, action, result. And some of that got stamped out of me and I had to return to it, but like not as much as most people. And I've been
Mm.
graced. So in that sense, I've continued to do what children do naturally. And of course I see that in my kids too. It's like daydreaming and then, speaking it, and then it occurs.
Yeah.
Um, Either
Mm.
because your parents go and make it happen, and you're incessant with it. Doesn't matter if they say no, you keep speaking it. And that's like, just that's that
Mm.
kind of focus. But I
Yeah.
want a toy dinosaur. But I want a toy dinosaur. But I want a toy dinosaur. One of the examples I've been giving about like, being obsessed with your outcome and not needing it. If I sat in a chair at peace, looking at a white wall, and said the word red long enough, they'd either lock me up or somebody would paint the goddamn wall red. Right? Like it's on one level, it's that simple. Like, and kids get it. You being the creator of the universe, just choosing that you are that. Um, and but here's the other thing though, that like I'm still trying to figure out and navigate. My kids are obviously a lot younger than yours, right? And so,
Mm.
you know there's a function, I think, to, we want to wake the wild because it's asleep, and in some ways it's asleep in ways that it didn't need to be, and in other ways there's a difference between being an animal and a human being.
Mm.
And so part of being a parent is the socialization of a child that then the life coach helps them to remove, right? But like, or shouldn't even say remove, to transcend and include,
Mm.
right? Because like you and I as adults can just trust that if we act from our intuition, we're going to act in ways that are socially adept. And part of the reason that is because human beings are naturally empathetic, but
Mm.
part of the reason is because socialization of the human being is something that happens through socialization, right? Like through, and
Yes.
our large
Yeah,
part of that
yeah.
is parenting. And so within that, I mean, there's a certain aspects of magic that we kind of remove from a child. Almost, I don't know. This is where I hesitate because I'm not sure it's true, but I feel like almost necessarily, in order to be able to give them a way of being in the world that's effective, so that then they can then return to, like, to make it even more specific, with my son at the age that he's at right now, like he can live and see so magically, and it's like, understanding that dragons and dinosaurs are different, I think is of service to him.
Mm.
Understanding that is of service to him, because if I leave them as the same, then he misses out on some understanding. And if I'm like, hey, maybe dragons are real, maybe dinosaurs are real. I mean, there's none alive right now, so we don't know. It's like, okay, well, something's missing. And so I
Mm.
don't want to be so attached to the magical that I don't give him the value of the world that we have created through this ability to distinguish in a certain ways that we have. We could even say reason. And so I'm navigating that myself right now. I feel like maybe in 5 years I'll be on the other side, but I'm trying to give them, um, I'm trying to help parent them into reason and to make
Mm.
decisions that are like healthy. Like he's 6 years old. Like, why can't I do this? Because it's a rule. Why do you have to follow rules? Well, I'm going to make up a story that has him do so long enough until like it would be of service for him to not, right?
Mm.
It's too early to
Yeah.
teach him to break the rules,
Mm.
even though I spend all day with my clients. I have a mentor, Richard and Linda Iyer. They do parenting, or for 30 years, they taught parenting, um, all over the world. Very, very successful. They had bestsellers. They were on Oprah back in the day, that kind of stuff. But it's so interesting because the three things that they really taught parents is how to, have your kids have self-control, how to have your kids be independent, and how to really have ownership and responsibility for their life.
Mm.
And now in their older life, they're like, that's actually the core of all self-development, self-help. It's like, if you just have control, ownership, and independence, then you'll be happy. And they said that actually that's a lie. Now they call them the Three Thieves of Joy. And actually, real happiness comes when you surrender independence to interdependence. Real happiness
Mm.
comes when you surrender control to serendipity. Real happiness comes when you surrender this idea of ownership to synchronicity, right? And it's like this transcendent idea. But it's not like, oh, we were wrong for 30 years. You
Mm.
need to teach your kids that so that you can have them transcend it and to find something beyond it. And so that's what I'm trying to navigate in the realm of magic and reason with my boys right now. One's almost 2, one's
Mm.
just turned 6.
I love this. It feels like this is a whole conversation in itself, and maybe we come back and have
Maybe the next one.
yeah, because
Yeah.
these are things have spent a lot of time kind of pondering and playing with. So, um, yeah, in short, I love this conversation, and maybe this is a part 2 in that case. And I'm sure it's something that listeners would love to hear us talk about. But I really agree with you, and I think so much of our work is based in the wild. And then specifically, when we look at humans who are still living in wild ways, we could say, in more of a kind of indigenous life way, so many of the answers kind of allow like the both, the form and the formless, the body and spirit. And I think trying to just kind of lock, stock, and barrel, take that and just say, okay, well, here we are in this modern world, we're just going to kind of like chuck all that in and hope it works, probably isn't going to. Completely like saying, okay, well, that none of that is going to be helpful, probably isn't the answer. And it is just like, again, that dance of how do we navigate with what is, which is very different to how humans have lived for most of our history, and allow kind of like those deeper truths, those principles that are still true for us as humans, to be present here now. And I think that's really true as adults, but I think particularly when you can almost like start from a blank sheet, with our children, I think that really like, okay, so like you're saying, kind of like what needs to go to sleep to be woken up, what doesn't need to go to sleep in the first place.
I think just being intentional about it is a great first step. Maybe I'll have more mastery, more wisdom down the road, but it's early days for me.
Yeah, I absolutely love this. So we are now nearing the end of this conversation. Is there anything you feel that would have been just like gorgeous had we had a chance to, if I could have asked you, we could have touched on, that we haven't?
Yeah, I mean, there's a principle that I didn't share that often comes up and hasn't, that I would love to share, at least to just tease it so that people can find their way into it deeper through things that I've shared or maybe in another interview. And that is, I'm not a religious person, but I like to delve into all religions and find the magic in them. And through the Christian path, the Bible, I was always interested in the verse in the book of Matthew that most people have heard of. And then through my intrigue and diving into it, I found out that there was actually an economic principle whose name is referenced based on this scripture. So I did it, it was a rabbit hole. The verse is, it's to those who have more will be given, and to those who have not, all will be taken away. I can't quote like the actual verse, but that like the number or whatever, but that's what it is. And there's a economic principle called the Matthew effect.
Oh, is
and
that?
It's a reference to the book of Matthew. And the Matthew effect is a scientifically measurable effect in which the people who
science voice
the people who get things are more likely to get more things. The person who gets a funding at the university is more likely to get more funding. That kind of idea. And it's like, the rich get richer. Like, yep, they do. Because once they have resources and they can create opportunities, they can meet more people. It just that's how it works. And I think that's the way that a lot of people understand that scripture in Matthew. But whilst diving into that, I was also studying the philosopher Martin Heidegger, and he has this concept of being, where like being is really the creation of a human being through the meaning that they make. And he gives an example of like, when is a chair touching the wall? And different people have different opinions on that. And there's no absolute truth. Like somebody might say it's touching the wall when it's 1 inch away. Another person might come along and be like, and slide it, and actually, so it hits the wall, makes a noise. Like, no, now it's touching. And then the scientist will come along and say, well, if you have an electron microscope, it's actually always still empty space, or you can slide a piece of paper. Like, when is it actually touching? And so then I was thinking about that same concept in the realm of having. When do I have money? Do I have it when I've sent the invoice, when they make the payment, or when it's pending in my account, or when it's cleared, or do I have to withdraw it and hold it as cash, or do I have to eat it?
My
like
investments versus my current account?
Yeah. Right. When do I have it?
Yeah.
And it's a what I have it when I choose that now I have it, and then suddenly the experience of having comes to life. And then I took that understanding. I said, to those who have, because they chose to experience that they have it, more will be given.
Mm.
To those who have not, because they chose that I don't have it yet, because it's not, I don't have it yet, all will be taken away. And so for me, magic comes down to choosing that I have that which I desire here and now. I don't care if it's in my bank account. I have
Mm.
it. I have it. I have it. What happens when I have something is gratitude. I don't have to do
Mm.
gratitude. Gratitude happens. My heart is filled with love and gratitude for that which I experience as having, and I show up that way in the world, and golf balls fall out of the sky.
That's a real mic drop moment, John. I love that. And I feel that there's sometimes these things can sound a little bit almost like bypassy or law of attraction. You're like, just, act, feel as if you have
Mm-hmm.
it. But I think the level of distinction you've brought to that like really gives it much more depth and
Mm,
meaning where I love that the chair against the wall part of that. So
mm,
yeah,
mm.
thank you so much.
Yeah, you're so
Mm,
welcome. Thank you, Leanne.
gorgeous. So where can listeners find out about you and your magical
Yeah.
work of creating everything?
Yeah, I mean, there's two places. For me personally, I still work with people one to one and through my website, johnpatrickmorgan.com. But we just launched a training company called wearecreating.com. So you can have a look at either. We have courses where we teach our principles at wearecreating.com, and we have immersive 1 year experiences where your dialogue and conversation is the essence of our work. Some people might call it coaching, but we help people to bring magic to life through conversation in loads of different ways. So both of those places are a good place to get started.
Fabulous. I bet you're so pleased to get that domain.
Oh, I am. Yeah. I mean, I wanted just creating.com, but the lovely lady who owns it and isn't using it is not interested in selling it. So maybe someday. But for now, We Are Creating is a great alternative because it's right here in my mug. I don't know if you have video on this. We are creating, and being now here is primary.
Mm,
It's the declaration. We are creating in the sense that we
yeah.
are doing it. We are that as a thing. So yeah, it's a good fit for us.
I'm digging it. Maybe that was meant to magically happen that way.
Yeah, I think so. Probably.
Oh, thank you so much, John. Until next time. That was just absolutely such a pleasure. Thank you
Thank
so
you,
much.
Leanne.